So supporters of this compact, this interstate popular vote compact, argue that by eliminating or rendering irrelevant the Electoral College and instead focusing on the national popular vote, they say that it would shift the focus of presidential elections away from what they call a handful of swing states, maybe Ohio, maybe Florida, maybe Pennsylvania. They say it would shift the focus away from those states. But it seems to me, Jarrett, that it would shift the focus away from certain states in favor of other states, but it still would be a very small percentage of the states. And here's what I mean. If we're talking about popular votes, then candidates would go to New York. They would campaign in New York City, a highly populated area. They would go to Miami, Florida. They would go to Dallas, Texas. They would go to Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, Chicago. And if you draw a line between all the cities that I just mentioned, it's around the outside of the United States. All of those Midwestern states, the heartland of America, the flyover states, would be ignored.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's what many, especially on the left, I think it's not just the states change. It's that they want to target only the big cities. I mean, that's really what this will come down to. A lot of these big cities will have most of the power. And I think for many on the left, they see the 2016 election. They see, frankly, almost their entire voting populace came from these big cities. They've lost in rural parts of America by an extreme margin. And instead of winning over those voters, many of whom they have won over in the past, they've decided to try to cut them out of the political process. They try to diminish the power of those districts so that they make those voters essentially irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. I think that's why this is so brazen. Instead of trying to change strategy, which is what presidential candidates have done throughout our history as a nation, the system has worked for over 2 centuries, they decided that they wanted to blow it up. And almost worse than that, they're not even going through the proper process, which is pass a constitutional amendment to change it. They're trying to use this compact to do a run around this and change the upcoming elections. And I think that's just wrong.
It is wrong. And something that you said, I think this is an additional point about swing states, or this idea that a small number of states have a concentrated influence on a presidential election within the Electoral College system. It's not true. And here's why. When you said before that, presidential candidates in the past have made an effort to win over certain voters in certain important areas, if you look at the history of swing states change all the time. They change almost generationally. A swing state that is a swing state today may not in 10 years be the state that we're focusing on. And we know that because we can look at the history of our country. I mean, California, for goodness sakes, used to be a swing state, and now no Republican even deigns to come here and campaign because they know they're never going to win this state. That changes, and it changes based on the behavior of the presidential candidates. And what ends up happening is that's a good thing. Different people from different areas of the country get their input in a presidential election, versus New York is always going to be highly populated. San Francisco is always going to be highly populated. If they had the concentrated vote because they were highly populous, that would never change.